Today we have Emily Harrison, and she is joining us with the Conscious Life Expo podcast. How are you doing today?
So excited to be with you, Melanie, and to have an opportunity to connect with the audience here before Conscious Life Expo. I know they're going to be mapping out their experience of where they want to go and where their soul is feeling called. So this is a really great time to share about the Akashic Academy and the records. So I feel honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much. And for those who are new to Emily and meeting her, Emily is the founder and director of the Akashic Academy. That is a modern day mystery school that is dedicated to sharing knowledge that is empowering humanity to find personal freedom through the Akashic Records. By accessing the Akashic Records, people can discover their soul's mission, the root cause of physical and emotional dis-ease, and to learn and to find the unseen solutions to their most challenging life circumstances. Emily was named one of the most 5 innovative businesswomen by Entrepreneur Magazine and has been featured on Gaia TV, HBO, Netflix, Thrive, and the Huffington Post, and on stage at Harvard University. And you can work with her also in the future, but before we get to cover her website or social medias, we will talk a little bit more about Emily and how she got started along her journey with the Akashic Records. And so where would you like to start with your journey and how you got started?
Oh, that's it. It's always a really fun question. I start at the beginning, Miss Melanie, although I promise this is still the abridged version, even though I'm starting at the beginning. But I like to tell about my roots and how I got started because I grew up in a really small town in the Midwest and quit life in Missouri, quit college when I was 19 and moved to Hollywood, where I was an actress for 20 years. So I know a lot of people can probably relate to growing up in a small town or, living part of our lives where we feel like we're a little more on the outside and, we're living that everyman kind of energy and experience. Maybe not will people experience what it's like going to Hollywood and living life in what feels like this altered, accelerated timeline where we have, visibility and power and the ability to be very self-expressed in who we are. But that's really the essence of what Hollywood gave me, was that experience with storytelling and self-expression. And it also is what actually led me into the greatest story, as far as I'm concerned, here on the planet, which is the Akashic Records. So when I was 19 and I quit college to move to Los Angeles, I was going to be an actress and I had beginner's luck. I started getting acting jobs pretty much right away. They weren't great acting jobs. The very first acting job I had, Melanie, was Curse of the Puppet Master. Do you remember the Puppet Master series?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Actually.
Okay.
Yes.
So I actually scored the lead in Puppet Master 6 within a month of being in Hollywood. And I think that The Alchemist really talks to us about that idea of beginner's luck and how when we are setting out on this new path, there are excitements and different initiations that happen to us, and we start to get into this energy right away. That's how I felt in Hollywood. It started happening really fast, and then it slowed way down, and I wasn't getting as many auditions. And when I was getting auditions, I felt like I was really great in my head when I was practicing, but I would go into the room and I was terrible. I couldn't control my nerves. I couldn't live up in that moment to this version of Emily that I wanted to be. It's like she was only here in my head. And so I knew I needed a way to access more of my own potentiality. So as I began meditating and doing yoga, doing things that really cultivated my subtle energy body, let me have an understanding and control of what was happening within me, I began to get more and more acting jobs. So the more I meditated, the more acting jobs I got. And the more acting jobs I get, the more I meditated. So I get more. And it became this cycle in my life where I was spending a whole lot of time meditating. And anybody who's taken on a commitment to meditation, or maybe a challenge where you're going to meditate every day for a month, you know that that process has its own consciousness and it begins to take over. And that's what I was finding was happening, is the more I was meditating and the more acting jobs I was doing, I'm like, wow, the more control I'm having over my reality. Like, what's going on here? The more I wanted to help other people have a control over their reality. So I started studying anything that I could get my hands on when it came to metaphysics. And I would listen to podcasts and read everything, just taking in all of this knowledge. And I remember being outside one day, my neighbor walked by. Hey, like the LA, the hi to your neighbors, like, hey, you don't really go very deep. Right. But on this particular day, we happened to go deep. I was noticing that he's limping. I haven't seen him for 6 months and he's limping. So I said, Daniel, what happened to you? You're limping. Yeah, I know, I fell and I hurt my foot and it's not healing well. It actually shattered my ankle, he said. And this is about the best I can do right now. And he's limping down the street like this. So I said, well, Daniel, do you want to come over for some energy healing? And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, what did I just say? I am an actress. I am not an energy healer. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'd have to act like I was energy healing him, right? I hope he doesn't say yes, is what I'm thinking. He says, sure, let me go put my dog away. So I'm thinking, all right, I've probably got 5 minutes tops to figure out what I'm going to do here for him. I had no idea. I was just winging it. He came over and I sit him down on my lawn furniture and I prop his foot up on a little outdoor stool and put big Sony headphones on. I'm playing solfeggio scale music. This is ancient harmonic music that shifts things in our body. And I'm waving, actually, this tuning fork right here. I just start waving it around his ankle. And I think, if my husband comes home right now, I'm going to have some major explaining to do. This is like not our normal mode of operation, right? And then all of a sudden, his father, who had passed, came into my awareness. And with all of this self-study that I shared with you, which may have included several seasons of Long Island Medium, I don't know, just saying. I'd seen Long Island Medium before. I knew what I was supposed to do. I'm supposed to talk to this spirit that's coming in. Right. So I'm a rookie. Like, all right, spirit, I feel you here. What's your name? If I'm supposed to talk to you, at least give me your name. And what comes back into my mind is I see like giant bubble letters, B-O-B, Bob, 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 Bob. It's like it's flashing in my mind, but not Bob. It crosses it out, but a J name. I'm like, okay, Bob, not Bob, but a J name. Okay. And he proceeds to say, I saved my son. I saved his life. And I'm like, what do you mean you saved him? His ankle's shattered. He can barely walk. Okay, Bob, not Bob, you saved him. And then the last image that his father shared with me in my mind, my imagination, was the image of two hands coming together. And I see this, the next thing I know, Daniel, my friend's taking the headphones off. I'm like, hey, do you feel better? He's like, yeah, I kind of do. I'm like, great, bye. Just shoo him off home. Don't say anything about his dad coming in. And I go inside and I'm getting this nagging feeling from dad, Bob, not Bob, but a J name. Please let him know I was here. Please let him know I was here. So I reach out to my friend. I said, all right, you know, I'm an actress. I am not a medium, but I feel like your father came through and has some messages that he wants to share with you. If you're open, I'll share them. No idea if I'm right or not, but I'll share them. And he said, no, I would love to hear. So he comes back over and we sit down. I say, what was your dad's name? He said, my dad's name was Alan. And I'm like, Alan, well, I got that wrong because I was seeing Bob, but not Bob, but a J name. And he goes, oh, he said, my dad's name was Alan J. His middle name was J, J-A-Y. He went by his middle name. And so at that point, we were both like, oh, there's something to this. And then I said to him, well, he's taking credit for saving you. I told him that he did a terrible job. Obviously, your leg is your ankle shattered, right? But he's insisting. And he said, well, Emily, this is what happened. I was shopping in Malibu in a second story of a jewelry store. And I'd been suffering from vertigo, and I felt that coming on again. So I decided to step out so I didn't pass out in front of, smash all the jewelry cases. And so he stepped outside to get some air, and he passed out outside 2 inches from 2 flights of concrete stairs. The paramedic said to him when they got him, like, literally, if you would have fallen even just a little bit differently, you would have fallen down these stairs and probably not be alive. So that all of a sudden had relevance to it as well. And then when I shared with him the idea of the hands coming together, at this point he was sobbing, and he said to me, Emily, my dad and I were estranged for decades, but we came together in the last years of his life, and I was holding his hand when he died. And in this moment, Melanie, I mean, he's crying, I'm crying, and I'm recognizing that there is no story more powerful that I could tell in Hollywood, no character that I could portray that was on a journey that was more exciting than the journey of human potential and what we could do. All of that meditation had turned on my awareness, my skills, our intuitive skills, our psychic skills, which, yes, we're all born with. I don't know about you. I was not born with mine turned on. So this process of deep meditation and commitment to my own expansion, granted, it was giving me something that my human flesh wanted, which was success in Hollywood, and I wanted these acting roles. But what was really happening was this change, this expansion, this awakening, this enlightenment within me. And I knew that this was a repeatable process that I could share and help other people turn on their awareness too, so that they could begin handling some of the biggest challenges that we experience in life, in incarnation, because we all come into this incarnation with themes, with lessons that we're here to learn. And so as I began to use my skills to tap in and get intelligence about these lessons, I was able to move at an accelerated pace through my life and stepping into my potential. And I wanted to share that with others. So that's when I created the Akashic Academy.
That's great. That's fascinating story. Thank you for sharing that and that experience with him, and in that moment with him when you were, not only just assisting him. How did you grow and expand as an individual even after that? And how long did that take you to really hone those skills and to accept those skills?
I was definitely ready to accept those skills. I was very excited about them. I didn't have the same experience that a lot of people had, where they felt afraid of their abilities, or, like stepping into their skills was in some way going to diminish them or make them a target. A lot of individuals, wisdom keepers, I'll call us, those who are returning here on the planet now to spread light and to share light, we've often lived past lifetimes where there's been a lot of persecution, but I didn't feel any of that in this lifetime. I was free of that. I was very excited. So there wasn't that challenge around like coming out of the closet, like a lot of people talk about with their skills. I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I need to let everybody know that this is real and that they can experience this level of freedom too. Now, I did have a lot of my own personal lessons still to learn along the way. So one of the biggest ones for me was around finances, and was around steady financial resources, being able to source and resource financial wealth and prosperity through my own mechanism, through my own genius, basically doing what I love to do and how I wanted to share gifts with the world, not being stuck in a 3D job or stuck in an acting job where I felt like I had to keep doing that work to make that money. It was really about learning how to sustain wealth through my own genius. And man, it was really challenging for me in Hollywood. I quit college when I was 19, so I didn't have a college degree to fall back on, nothing for me to fall back on, right? And then in Hollywood, I would work for 6 weeks, a couple months on a movie, making a lot of money as I was doing that movie, but then there might be 8 months where I wasn't working. So it really felt like a feast or famine. There was never this steadiness. I was either in like overabundance and, oh wow, I've got all of this money in my bank account right now, or I was in nothing. I hadn't had a paycheck come in for a really long time. And over the course of my 20 years in Hollywood, 2 times I was on food stamps while I was there. And at this point in my life, I had become an adult and a mother. I had children. I mean, it's that I got to get my baby's milk, right? And buy their diapers and get all of the things that they need. And I didn't have enough to source and resource what I needed through my own genius. And so that, brings in feelings of learned helplessness and of fear and of lack. And I had to overcome all of those things through being the founder and director of the Akashic Academy. And I had been doing work with people in the Akashic Records, training in them and their Akashic Records for a couple of years when everything was pulled out from underneath me. So my marriage ended and my husband moved out. He also was the main support for our family in terms of finances. And he lost his 6-figure job, and they'd given him a severance check. He took to the bank. He got robbed coming out of the bank. So literally all of this from the time that he moved out of our family home to, oh man, there are no more finances or resources to protect and care for my family, all happened within about 2 weeks. So it felt like this really intense time of accelerated karma, right? And I knew in those moments that we didn't have savings and that I would need to step up and provide for my kids and my family. And I wasn't making enough in my business as an entrepreneur at that point in time. I was making maybe $2,000 a month. That's more of a side hustle, y'all. You can't take care of 5 kids. I'm sorry, not 5 kids, 3 kids. There are 5 of us total. When I count the animals and myself in there, but there was no way that I could do that on, that little amount of finances. And so I used the Akashic Records to help me figure out what to do. And what the records showed me was there's a reason I was only making $2,000 a month. And that was because I had a success ceiling in my life. Back in my Hollywood days, I saw myself as an A-list actress, Angelina Jolie. I'm going to get there. I don't care how long I have to be auditioning. I'm going to get there. And I didn't want to do soap operas. So I turned soap operas down many times along the way. Well, when I had my first child, Jack, and I didn't want to be auditioning during the day and waiting tables at night, I took a job on a soap opera. Soap opera came back around and said, Emily, we have a great role for you. I tried to convince myself that this was a great role. And I ended up getting fired from that role less than a year into that contract. And I was absolutely humiliated. And through that process, I created a success ceiling. I was 26 years old when that happened. And I didn't have the tools to manage the shame that I was feeling. So I created a success ceiling, which is like a soul contract with myself that says, if this is what success looks like, I don't want it. And so I needed to go back and clear that energy around the success and the humiliation and the shame that I felt when I felt like I was failing. I felt like I wasn't succeeding, right? And the records helped me clear that in my life. And within 8 months of that, Melanie, I was able to quintuple my income, keep my kids in the house, take care of the needs that they had, and was able to learn about myself as an entrepreneur in a different way, learning really, truly how to source and resource wealth and abundance and our service here to the planet. So that's just one example along the way that the Akashic Records have required me to continue to grow and stay in a level of mastery so that I can help others and teach others how we get out of that learned that learned helplessness, I'll say, and we become radically self-reliant.
Yes, I agree. Those and those patterns, we can call them patterns or conditions, programming, we all have them, regardless if we want them or not. We all have them, unfortunately, but they are good learning lessons, tools to help us self-improve and heal along way and journey and get out of our own ways. So
Yeah, when we learn to look at them as our teachers
right.
along the way here in this classroom of life, then it takes some of the charge out of the energy, right? It takes some of the victimization out of the experience, and it helps us to reframe our experience, which is a superpower. I mean,
Yeah.
being an actress for 20 years, I love story, y'all. We are the tellers of our own story. And so many times we're telling ourselves a story that's not serving our highest empowerment. But just that flip that you found right there, that
Right.
perspective shift, right? That moves us back into our power. These challenges are my teachers. They're teaching me to become more resourceful.
Right, definitely. And how did that lead you, with your own personal experience? How did you decide to create the Akashic Academy? And then I guess for those who are listening who aren't familiar with the Akashic Records, can you
Yeah,
share with us what the Akashic Records are and how we can
of
access and
course.
utilize that?
So after this experience with my friend Daniel, when I was lit on fire to share with people about human potentiality, I'd been self-studied all different things for this previous 20 years. And I thought, what do I want to get certified in that I can help others? And I'm thinking Reiki, nah, that's not really it. Yoga, they did. And then all of a sudden I landed on, I'm like, the Akashic Records. Wait a minute. The records hold every detail of our past, our present, all possible futures. The Akashic Records are the realm of consciousness that hold all information. And I thought, well, that's kind of like the universal guidebook, right? The manual of how we get through this experience. Like there's nothing that we can't ask and understand from that space. That one's going to be it for me, because I felt like there were no limitations and there were so many different aspects of learning that I was excited about. So the Akashic Records became the area of expertise that I chose to cultivate, simply because we could access anything that we needed through that space. And I began my own personal training with a mentor, a teacher at that point in time, going through different levels of the Akashic Records. First, just learning how to do it, right? And then we go through a really deep purging of our own karma, meaning the unlearned lessons that we have, those patterns that we talked about before that are repeating themselves. We've got to learn how to identify these patterns and heal them. There are a variety of ways to heal them, but it's just basically bringing an experience back into wholeness so that we can have access to our full power. And then once we have access to our full power, it's about using the Akashic Records to tap into extraordinary levels of genius. Like this is the realm that Nikola Tesla, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein all tapped into to bring us understanding and technology and medicine and ideas that through our human construct, our mind is limited. But when we tap into God mind or universal intelligence, we can tap back into our unlimited nature. So let's see, you asked me about the academy. Tell me the questions again. I got off in a little, I was monologuing there for you a second,
No,
Melanie. So
that's great.
again.
Yeah, well, I actually have a next question that's leading on to what you were saying,
Okay.
but I wanted to learn more about how you decided to create the academy. But I also have a
So
question now
yeah.
about the Akashic Records and consciousness. So whichever one.
Okay. Well, we'll start with how did I create the academy? I'll just answer that super laser focused. So I learned how to read the Akashic Records and to do this for other people, but then I realized it's so much more powerful if people are reading their own records. Like, I grew up Southern Baptist, really immersed in the church and, in Sunday school. And I was remembering, in the Bible, Jesus said, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And I felt like the most empowered work that I could do is truly teaching other people to read their own records. So that's when I made the decision to not just show up and be an oracle for other people, but say, you have the ability to do this too. Let me show you how to do this for yourself.
I love that. And that is amazing. And it's such a gift to be able to guide someone to that state of awareness and consciousness so they can do that and guide themselves in whichever direction they need, which is fascinating. And my other question I had about the Akashic Records and consciousness was, do we all have our own Akashic record file, or is the records as a whole for the the sea of consciousness, as we would know it? What's your perspective or thoughts on that?
Oh, good question. Okay. Yes and yes. So yes, we all have our own individual records. Every person, place, thing, idea, crystals for that matter, relationships, governments, planets. So from macro to micro, every single thing has an Akashic record. You hit on something like really profound and beautiful in there though, because that is, we're really not separate. Even though I seem separate from you, from the crystal, from the table, no, it's not true. It's just, it's the Maya, it's the illusion, right? The higher truth is that when we incarnate here into this planet of density, yes, there's perceived separation, but it's also, we can isolate characteristics and really begin to learn about unique personality traits of the one God mind. You have some, I have some. They're scattered a little bit all around in this planet where we get to live it all as a one being, and we really get to return to unity consciousness. It's one of the, the great challenges and up levels that gets to happen as we're playing this game of humanity here on the planet. Is we get to go from separation back into that state of unity consciousness. So from that perspective, everything truly is connected. Another reason that we incarnated into physicality or into this 3D reality, because in that state of everything connected, it's all one, there's no contrast, it's just right? There's no learning through that process. So as we incarnate into these physical expressions and unique individual physical expressions, then we get to learn about this contrast, and we get to love and observe, this contrast for the great teacher that it truly is. But if we thought about, we're all connected, we all have the same Akashic record, it then gets really challenging. Like, how does a human use this in a way where there are rules and repeatable methodology? So let me bring it back down into the rules, right? Because I can't open your records, Melanie, even though we're connected and we are this unity consciousness. Without your permission, I don't get access to your records and what's part of your journey and your soul's journey in that way, unless you grant me permission. Okay. So we always need permission when we are going into the Akashic records. What to do if we don't have someone's permission? Like, for example, I can open up my own Akashic records if I'm having a challenge with my kid, and without opening my kids' records, but say, how can I best show up to guide and love my child in this situation? Because I'm blowing it, or whatever the situation is, right? We have to take full responsibility in the records as well. I can't say, why does that child keep doing that X, Y, Z? No, it's me taking personal responsibility. How do I get to show up and parent in a way that creates a different relationship between the two of us? So I'm not usurping my child's privacy by asking about how I get to up level myself. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Yes. And as you were describing the Akashic records, I have a couple of visions. One is, it's almost like we're all books in the library, of course. And another vision I saw was that we're all leaves on the same tree, with that same type of groundedness, the tree of life, we are that, that is what we are in a sense. And so that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I felt the chills run through my body as you were sharing those visions too. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, wonderful. And so whenever you get that permission from someone, are you journeying through like a reading, or is it more like astral projection? Like, how do you receive these readings, and how are they received by you?
Again, great question. Well, they're received by all of us differently, right? So I'll zone in on when you talk about, or when you ask me, how are they received by me, what that looks like. And so the mode of communication that we use when we are communicating with the Akashic Records, or with spirit guides, or God, or anything that is outside of our physical reality, we're using our imagination, right? We're using our intuitive senses, our clairsenses, clairvoyance, which is clear inner seeing. So for example, when I was telling the story about, I asked this entity what its name was, and I saw in my mind Bob, right? Big bubble letters, Bob. That's my clairvoyance and my experience with my inner clair. So I'm actually seeing this in my imagination, in my mind's eye. I'm seeing it, right? So sometimes when I'm working in someone's records, the information, I'll see it. Most of the time for me, it's my clairaudience. It's just like a feed is running through my ears, and I'm just like speaking what I hear right after I'm noticing it alive in my field. But we've talked about clairsentience here too. When I said, "Oh, I've got the goosies, the chills," when you said that, Miss Melanie, that's our clairsentience, our clear inner feeling, which is a truth indicator. We can also, with our clear inner feeling, we can feel other people's feelings. That's what's known as being an empath. Also important to know that these gifts that we have, like being an empath, that can express in a very high, beautiful octave, powerful octave. It can express in a low shadow octave. So if you are somebody who feels like you don't like going out in public because you get everybody else's energy and you feel drained, that's empathy expressing in its shadow octave. You're becoming drained because you don't have a command over this superpower, this psychic superpower that you have. When you do have command over your clairsentience, what happens is you walk into a room and you set the temperature of the room. Everybody else rises up to meet you. They're like, "Oh, I feel so good hanging out with you," right? It's because the vibrations will raise to synchronize to the strongest vibration in the room. So that's an example of our clairsentience, clear inner feeling. And we can get messages through fields too, right? And then there's the claircognizance, the clairknowingness. That one's the hardest to describe because it's just like all of a sudden we've got a download, or something makes sense, or we've got a lot more intelligence than we had a few seconds before, because we just see the bigger picture. We become aware to the bigger picture. And these are all of the ways that when I'm working with somebody, I mean, if I'm in my records or I'm teaching somebody else about how they get information from their own records, it's all coming through in this symphony of inner awareness. Sometimes it's your clairvoyance, sometimes it's your clairaudience. And when I work with people, we begin to isolate and really understand those different versions of those clairs and what they look like, or what it's like to experience them, so that we can understand them better individually, and then they all begin to play together. Maybe we're seeing and hearing at the same time, which that feels more like an astral travel. Like when you asked about the astral travel, is it like you're tapping it? Once we're using more of our senses, the experience becomes more full. And then it does feel all of a sudden like, oh, I'm in this new space. I'm experiencing it with more than one of my senses. And I think that's when astral travel, or that term astral travel, comes alive for many of us, is that we're having this grander experience with our senses.
Right. And let's talk a little bit more about astral traveling. And is that something that we do in our awake, when, like right now, if we're awake and aware, or is that something that we do while we're sleeping? Let's talk a little bit more about astral travel and what that is.
Yeah, it happens both times. It happens consciously and unconsciously. I mean, right now we are present here having a conversation together. But if your mind has wandered about maybe dinner, or if my mind has wandered about, oh, the kids along the way, that's us living in like a secondary reality. right? It's like bilocating. I mean, we're present here together in our base reality, but our consciousness has become present and aware to another reality. So that's even an example of astral traveling. You know, if you're driving your car and you're texting, which don't do that, by the way, don't drive and text. 5 teenagers, like I said, get off your phone if I ever see them on the phone. But if you were, let's say, driving and texting, maybe you've done it before in your life as a human, you're projecting yourself present here behind the car is the driving, right? And then the mind is present here in this alternate reality where you're texting, and we're actually present in more than one location at once. So that begins to give us an example of times when maybe we've astral traveled or bilocated, or the consciousness has moved into another dimension. And it just feels like we're living our normal everyday life. I mean, you know, sometimes we talk about astral travel and we feel like it's going to be some big, crazy experience, like a trip, like we just, you know, I might have done some drugs in my Hollywood
Yeah, some
days,
Terrence
y'all.
McKenna.
Like, right? Like maybe we're going on some kind of a big trip, but no, it's just really, it's our everyday life and our everyday experience. So astral traveling is really just when we are becoming present to our consciousness outside of the physical anchoring of our human bodies. We do this a lot in the Akashic Records for healing. Like when if you're going into a past life or you're going into a future life, this is an example of an astral travel where your consciousness gets to move free of the time-space continuum and become non-local so that you can observe more than what's being experienced by the physical part of you.
Right. Yes. And we can also look at the Akashic Records almost like a playbook, you know, like this overview of what we have in front of us and how we can improve ourselves and, you know, going forward and heal even things in our past. And so I think that's just fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And when you work with someone, what is that? I don't want to say turnaround for that healing for that person, because I know everyone has their own path and journey and lessons in their own time to get over those obstacles that they might have. But you know, who else have you worked with that this can help
Right.
with?
Well, I mean, thank you for saying that we all have our own path, and there are lessons, there's learning, there's understanding that happens along this journey. And healing can happen instantaneously. You know, once we've seen and learned enough of the lessons, the gifts within the wounds, so to speak, or whatever challenge that we're experiencing, healing can happen instantaneously. And sometimes you feel like you go over and over and over, and you just get like a little more healing each time on these issues. But the Akashic Records will work with you to definitely accelerate the timeline that you're on, because part of what makes the healing journey so arduous and challenging is that we don't really know what the root problems or causes are, and so we're shooting in the dark sometimes, trying healing this and healing this and healing this, and let me shift this. But the Akashic Records takes us right into the root cause of where we took on trauma, or patterns of lack or belief systems that aren't serving us. So we save massive amounts of time by using the Akashic Records to zero in. Time is an interesting one, right? Because as humans, we're very concerned with time and linear time and how long things are going to take. In the records, when we ask about time in the records, it's less about 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, and it's more about when you do this, when you understand this, right? So I do want to share that in terms of time discrepancies of our 3D experience here, and then as we get higher up going in the realms. And there's one more thing that I wanted to say about time. Oh, and then just like a really straightforward answer, I can train somebody to read the Akashic Records in 15 weeks. Not only how to read their records, but to go through a comprehensive reading of their own records, where they can go through that process of clearing their karma or unlearned lessons, or themes of our life that just seem so sticky and we're not moving past, or where we still feel like a victim.
Right.
And then also within that 15 weeks, we go into unique genius, unique creativity and mission. You talked about that a little bit when you were introducing me. And I think my eyes lit up really. That's one of my favorite things to do with the Akashic Records is really tap into what is our unique mission. Because as you know, Melanie, and everyone here at Conscious Life Expo knows, we are at a critical time of evolution and expansion of light here on our planet, of consciousness on our planet. And all of us have agreed to be here during this time to do the work of the great mission of bringing in paradigms of the new earth and changing ways that society gets to be and interact and new ways of doing things. And while this all sounds really grand, right? We get to change the paradigms of the planet. Yes, it is really grand. And the work still needs to be done on the microcosm for each one of us. How am I showing up? Am I showing up in my Christed consciousness of patience and compassion? And oh gosh, this just gave me a wave of emotion. I'm not sure why, but filling the gaps with trust. Right? There are so many times when I just did it with my daughter this morning. She's like, Mom, fill the gaps with trust. I go, oh yeah, we got to do that, right? But this is really all part of this grand evolutionary expansion and new consciousness and radical power over our creative field. Hey man, I want to be humans creating good lives of peace and love and prosperity and abundance together. And we must do that in our own microcosm. That's what we're really responsible for right now.
Yes, that's very important to recognize our self-healing and growth and evolution, that period that we are in right now. And I like that you mentioned, that victimization and how we have to find out what it is within us instead of pointing what's outwards, what's wrong with the picture outside of us. But you're right, it's that resonance and that frequency within ourselves that we need to look at that root cause, that root problem, and be able to embrace that with trust, of course. And I think removing the ego and that self-judgment is super important because, once we allow that veil to fall, then we are able to allow the frequencies around us to come in naturally align and as we could say, dance with destiny on the doorstep as it shows up when all time is right. And it is about our path and purpose and mission. So thank you for doing everything that you're doing and that you're offering. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm excited to get to know more of the audience here that's going to be at Conscious Life Expo. We're going to be having a booth as well as a lecture and a workshop. So if the Akashic Records are intriguing you and piquing your curiosity in terms of how they can help you move in an accelerated pace in terms of your expansion and your mission here on the planet, make sure that you put us on your list too.
Yeah.
Come listen to it. Come hang out with us. Melanie, actually in the workshop at Conscious Life Expo, I'm going to be taking people into their Akashic records so they can experience them. You're going to go through a guided process of opening your records. That's in the workshop.
Oh, that's fascinating. So that's the free lecture that's coming up February 2024.
Okay, free lecture. I'm going to get everybody prepped. We're going to talk about the Akashic Records, what they are, how we use them. I'm going to give everybody the 101, the who, what, when, where, why, how. And then for the workshop, the 90-minute free workshop, we're going to have an experience in their Akashic Records where you'll be tapping in and getting intelligence about your soul mission.
Wonderful. And so people will have that expectation to be prepared for that. And so more in the Akashic Records, the lecture? The lecture is going to be Friday, February 9th at 3 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. And that's going to prepare you for the companion workshop for opening your Akashic Records. And that will give everyone a comprehensive overview about the Akashic Records, including where they're located and how to gain the access. And do you have the date and time for the workshop?
Yes, the workshop is going to be on Sunday, and it's going to start at 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's going to be very exciting. And so you also mentioned you're going to have a booth as well.
Yes, you can come find us in the main ballroom. So make sure you, I can't remember what our booth number is. You have to look me up in the little guide there, but we are in the main ballroom, and make sure you come by. We're going to have activations and freebies and swag bags and all kinds of great things to help you in your journey with your records.
Oh, great, great, great. And is this your first time at the Conscious Life Expo?
It is my first time ever being at the Conscious Life Expo, and I am very excited to not only be amongst all of that powerful energy and expansion, the visionaries, thought leaders, quantum influencers who will be there, but I'm really excited that my first time here at the expo, I get to share my unique genius of the records with the community there. So my team and I, we are so looking forward to this, and we're like, oh, what little prizes and surprises and special things can we plan for our guests that want to come and have just a really profound experience with us. So we're thinking about you, and we're planning the best party the Akashic Academy has ever thrown. I'll tell you that.
Oh, great. We can't wait for that. And so what can others expect in your workshop and lecture for the expo?
Yeah, if there's any area of your life where you feel challenged or stagnant, expect and get ready for movement to start happening in those areas again, and not just movement in terms of maybe what you're expecting. I want you to experience a life where your expectations are exceeded. So I want you to get really excited. This is not about opening up potentiality for you that is humdrum or that you've experienced before, is, it's like, all right, that's not, no, this is about blowing your circuits and bringing you back into a life that is so exciting for you to live, that you are thrilled to get out of bed every morning when you wake up. I want to live in a world where my fellow humans are passionate about getting up and living this experience. So I want you to expect a radical influx of inspiration and movement in your life. And I also want you to expect a calling when you interact and come into the energy, the frequency of the Academy. This is igniting your calling here on the planet. You won't be able to deny it anymore. Let me just say that, folks. It's going to be like spirit nagging at me when I tried to pretend that my friend's dead father did come into. No, let him know I was there. 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 That nagging energy, right? This is, you're not going to be able to escape this without answering the soul call that comes through for you.
That's true. Yes, it's all about taking that first step. And if there's anybody out there that has hesitation about that self-healing journey and stepping into that, what do you have to share for them today?
For anybody who has hesitation, I wanted to say something like really nice and encouraging. This is still going to be encouraging, but the guides are busting your chops, y'all. Okay. If you have hesitation about moving forward into healing, look at learned helplessness. Look at where holding on or defending your illness or your dis-ease allows you to keep it, because what we defend, we get to keep, right? So if you want to defend your dis-ease, then likely it's feeding you in some way, meaning it's protecting you in some way, or it's getting you the attention that you truly wanted as a child, but your parents, your family, they weren't there for you in that way. That's a lot of times why we take on illness like that, is we just need attention and love. But we've got to get really clear with ourselves and hold ourselves accountable when we've fallen into victimization and learned helplessness, because the higher truth is we are sovereign beings. No one can take away your freedom, your free will, your choice in life, you can give it away. And so if you are at a place where you need healing, but you feel a little bit trepidatious about that, let yourself just breathe. Let yourself be held in a space. No, it's part of our collective programming that keeps us playing small. That learned helplessness is, and it's time for a rise, a collective rise from humanity, so that we can truly overcome anything that presents itself as a challenge or obstacle in our way.
Yes, I love that. It's human revolution is what I hear.
Yes.
Right. Stand up for yourself. I like that.
Yes.
So beautiful, beautifully said. Thank you. And so I look forward to meeting you at the Conscious Life Expo, which is going to be February in 2024 in Los Angeles at the LAX Hilton. And so is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers or listeners about yourself or your mission and your purpose?
My purpose and mission is around freedom. Like this small town in Missouri that I grew up in, I shared with you guys a little of my story, that small town Missouri girl to LA. This small town that I grew up in, geographically, the Underground Railroads run through this part of the country, and an entrance into the Underground Railroad, which is of course where the many slaves found their way to freedom back in the days of the Civil War and early days of this country. And there was an entrance to the Underground Railroad through my friend's fireplace growing up, just fascinated with this. And as I went through my Akashic Record training, I remembered a past life of leading people to their freedom through these underground tunnels. And I saw the connection, the symbolism of how I'm leading people to freedom in a modern day context. We're just here doing this again. And so I would really like people to anchor into that revolution of personal freedom and say, what does that mean for you? Maybe it means financial freedom, like I was able to step into. Maybe it means freedom to heal the wounds of your family and the ancestral karma and pain and trauma that we might be carrying. But freedom, we're all here to increase the amount of freedom, the vibrational frequency of freedom here on the planet. So think about what true freedom means for you, where you would like more freedom in your life, and let the Akashic Records show you how to reverse engineer that timeline, how to find your tunnel, your wormhole from where you are now to where you want to be. It's the greatest, most magical resource that we have to help us advance.
Wonderful. And where can we find you through your website? What is that website that you have?
Come find me at the akashicacademy.com.
Great. And are there any social media platforms that we can find you on?
Yeah, the Akashic Academy is going to be your best bet on any of the platforms. We're the Akashic Academy with Emily Harrison on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Instagram. I think I got all of them.
Okay.
I TikTok and Twitter every now and then, but not very much. Come find me on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Yeah.
Great. And we will share those links for everyone. And that way we can connect with you further if anyone is interested in that. But until then, we will wrap up our conversation today. It was such a pleasure speaking with you and getting to know more about you and what you do and how we can share that with one another as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Melanie. I can't wait to meet you at the Expo.
Of course. And thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you and everyone else here at the Conscious Life Expo in February 2024.